Okay, thank you everyone for joining today. As you can see from the title today, we're going to be talking about why now is the time to amp up your storage security. Can your storage infrastructure keep pace with all the other innovation that you're doing? Michael is about to take us through everything you need to know, not just about storage security, but the importance of future proofing. So let's get started. So as you know, when you actually signed up, we did promise you a gift, which you either chose the Yeti Rambler or Tile Pro. It will be in the mail. More importantly, if after this session you have questions or challenges that you want to discuss, be sure to schedule a one-on-one discussion with the Logicalis team. Their schedules get booked up really quickly, and if you do have those challenges and want to have a meeting, let us know, and we'll actually have a meal of your choice delivered after your meeting. So today we are honored to be able to talk with a real expert. We have Michael Bennett. He's the director of Modern Data Center for Logicalis. And
Hello, everybody.
I was going to say Logicalis is a global technology service provider that delivers excellent next generation digital managed services. And they help companies optimize operations, empower employees, and reduce risk. Moving forward, so with their digital solutions. So why don't we go ahead and take us into our first statistic for today. So as you may know, there's so much focus on security, future proofing, as well as a lot of focus on efficiency, optimization, and modernization. But the underlying layer that's required for all of that stuff to be fully realized is storage. So you definitely want to make sure that people are taking the steps to be thinking about their storage strategy in tandem with these other actions. You want to improve your security posture, think about storage. You want to modernize your supply chain, you have to think about storage. You want to move critical workloads to the cloud. Again, this involves your storage strategy. So with all this in mind, our first stat shows that 88% of IT leaders encounter challenges ensuring that their IT staff has the necessary skills to manage hybrid cloud infrastructure. So Michael, tell us a little bit about in what ways can companies do hybrid cloud storage wrong? What are the best practices for IT staff? And, are some systems better than others for this approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks a lot. And the whole idea of making sure staff has enough skills to be able to understand, back in the old days, it was just, all right, so I got file storage, I got block storage. It was fairly easy to be able to map those needs. But as security needs rise, as the architecture needs rise, going beyond just block and file, going to object, going into containerized workloads, there's a lot of things that need to be considered as you're looking at the infrastructure itself. And some of the basic blocking and tackling stuff still exists, the sizing. If you're looking at capacity, performance, mapping your right workloads to the right storage process, all of that comes into place. You want to make sure the system that's being used is stable. Oftentimes I see some clients that really trying to penny pinch, and they may forego just simple failover and availability to meet that need. But really what you really want to focus on is make sure that first off, the application is going to be serviced in the way that's going to best meet those needs, and it's going to be the right size for your solution. Then you want to look at security. Security back in the day used to be just password management, AD integration, things of that nature. But today, clients are leveraging practices like zero trust. This idea of immutability or air gap solution is something that's come into play. Clients really need to understand what that means and how to position it for the best for their organization to be successful. And knowing those skills within your organization, whether it's the IT admin, whether it's the business process manager, whatever that is, you really need to understand where your capabilities and limits are. And that's where partners come into play, like Logicalis and IBM, to be able to help you understand taking advantage of all these new architectures, new technologies, and thinking about everything from a new viewpoint. And as you look at public cloud consumption, it's a green space. It's very easy to consume public cloud. It's also very easy to consume it wrong. Having the skills and somebody that's done this over and over again can definitely help you avoid consuming that recklessly. Another thing that clients tend to look at from a hybrid cloud storage capability of doing it incorrectly is not enabling the growth of the capabilities with each new project. take a new storage purchase or a new application onboarding as a way to either implement automation with solutions like IBM CyberVault. We'll talk about that in a little bit, as well as things like Ansible or whatnot to be able to improve your capabilities and improve your ability to deploy these quicker in a more repeatable fashion. Oftentimes storage is tied to production, but having be able to protect the data with a CyberVault solution allows you to enable that immutability and safeguarded copies, as IBM calls them, to greatly enhance the recoverability of those protected data sets. And really a partner can help you grow and take advantage of that. Some best practices from an IT staff perspective, go through an application mapping exercise. A lot of times I'll see clients that are the infrastructure focused and they say, hey, I just need X amount of terabytes for this workload. Yeah, they might say, well, I need it on flash storage. I might need it on spinning disk for what the use is, but really understanding the full aspect of that application, because that database might be just a dev test database, or it might be a database that's at the core of your business. And you want to be able to align the data needs to that business outcome. And once you go through and mapping those workloads to the correct business process, you'll be able to look at the infrastructure at a much more clear lens and be able to say, okay, how can this infrastructure help easily support that workload? It's hard to understand how the process can fit in, but really those are the questions you need to ask. Does the data have compliance needs? Does it have to be auditable? Should an attack happen from a data security standpoint and the data is locked, how do you go about in recovering that data? And what's the impact to the business over a time period and what that looks like? Understanding the importance of the data and how quickly you need to recover it in the event of attack is a key thing that clients really need to understand. And all that leads to, I would say, DR testing. DR testing back in the day was, I have an application at one site, I have a replicated application at another site, I can spin it up as needed. But with the complexity of these cyber attacks, it becomes harder and harder to be able to do that. So really what you want to be able to do is leverage the ability to test these DR plans against a lot of different scenarios, not just system downs or data's been deleted, but what if an attack were to happen? And when you do those DR testing, try to figure out ways to document, improve, and automate those workloads so it's much more repeatable and happening in a much faster fashion. These are all things that come into play when you start hearing words like cyber insurance, and being able to have that DR testing, having the immutability, having your data protected from a key storage standpoint. All of that goes into reducing your cyber insurance costs. And back to you.
Wow, thank you so much for that information. So it sounds like it's so important to take the time to evaluate storage strategy and infrastructure, because the storage infrastructure that's in place will give you your maximum security, flexibility, extensibility, the ability to be really involved and really be able to future-proof your infrastructure, so that storage isn't something that has to hold you back or be replaced. Michael, isn't this why a lot of companies are using flash systems?
Yeah, so flash system storage, and that's kind of an IBM brand, but flash storage in general allows you to get a lot of performance out of the capacity that you need. Not only from a standpoint of being able to service the production workload, but as you look at the solution we're talking about with the CyberVault that the IBM flash system solution can be prepared to deliver, allows you to be able to quickly recover in the event of a disaster. Some of the other solutions out there on the market actually look at flash storage and they replicate the data via whether it's the backup hardware or whatnot, and that allows it to read it fast, but it doesn't exactly save you from the data protection. So you may have your backup software that's piped that data to another site, air gaps it and protects it from that standpoint, and that's great, but being able to recover it fast still has to go back through that same pipe. The flash system from IBM, leveraging the CyberVault architecture, allows you to take an immutable snapshot that's on that same storage, and it's immutable, being that it cannot be written over. It's locked down through multiple verification with usernames to be able to delete it or change it. And then even through the process, what it ends up doing is takes another copy of that data and uses that for restoration. So that air gapped or immutable copy is key to being able to recover that fast, and leveraging flash system storage will allow you to do that. And flash drives itself will just make that much faster.
Very, very interesting, and a lot of information, and thank you so much for that. And that's going to actually take us kind of into our next slide. So 74% of cloud migration projects fail, meaning that companies had to move an app back to their own infrastructure. Michael, can you talk to us a little bit more about this? In regard to app integration or modernization, what are some of the common roadblocks that you're seeing when it comes to storage strategy and infrastructure? And I mean, is there anything significant that companies should avoid?
Yeah, so as you're looking at doing this more and more app integration, there's a lot of different things that go into play. You may have a traditional application that runs through a database, application server, your web server architecture. And when you're looking at doing that kind of cloud migration, the data adjacency to the application can be of concern. It's very easy to spin up web servers up in the cloud, but if it's connecting to a backend storage back onto your on-premises environment or across cloud boundaries, it can hinder the experience from a client standpoint. And data processing can be too segregated. So that's one thing you need to make sure you're taking into consideration. Another thing, we mentioned a little bit around data, but data value. What's the value of that data to the organization? You can have a cloud workload that might just be a file share that might hold legal documents, and losing access to that might not be a make or break over a couple of days. But if it's core application data to your business, that's where you really need to understand what makes sense for how that's going to be architected and designed, and make sure you have a plan to be able to recover that. And understanding that data is what's key to be able to look at that. And then talking about data protection, and I have a little bit of a client situation myself that kind of came into this one, but being able to understand how your data is going to be protected could cause some of these cloud migrations to fail right out the gate. I had one client that had a cloud first strategy. They started to move workloads to the cloud. They said, all right, I got my application servers, my database servers, everything. We started moving everything over. What they didn't realize was their data protection methodology was not very cloud friendly. It made lots of copies. It locked data in expensive EBS storage. It was just not architected to be running in the public cloud. So what ended up happening with them is, as they were going through this first rollout, their storage prices ended up going through the roof, and not really understanding how to correct that out the gate. And they mapped it back to that data protection strategy. A huge unexpected bill is a great way to have a cloud strategy fail. So really what the best thing to do for them was to go back on premises, understand how their data protection strategy filters into the overall workload in the cloud adoption. And they determined, well, this particular workload and how it needs to be protected for compliance makes sense to be remaining on premises. So it kind of shook the CIO a little bit to understand that a cloud first strategy can be a good strategy, but a cloud everything strategy isn't always going to work the best. Not only that, securing the data, being able to have expected costs, all that comes into play, but being able to secure the data during the data path as well. That's important, because now you're shipping data that's predominantly already behind your existing protection in your walls and your four walls of your data center, and now you're shipping it out to a remote location. So it's fairly easy to be able to protect that and build the walls when it's on premises. But then as you look at the cloud, you need to make sure that you have the right security portfolio in place to protect it. Solutions like IBM Guardium can do application protection. It can do key management. It can help you really lock down that environment from a data protection standpoint, and it can help data be encrypted both on premises as well as it's being moved to the cloud. In addition, understanding your recovery needs. As some clients look at it and say, oh, I can spin up more workload to be able to recover it in the cloud. Yeah, that can be an aspect of it, but during a cyber attack, you need to make sure that that data is being protected. It is immutable. Protect against loss of data, loss of user error that might come into play. There's a laundry list of issues that can come into that as you're looking at the data and how it's being protected. This begins the process of outlining a data placement strategy that meets what you're trying to accomplish within the organization and ensures you're using the correct tools to seamlessly protect your data while positioning yourself to quick and successful recovery. So all of that comes into play, and those solutions like Cyber Vault, what new solution from IBM Sentinel. I mentioned some of the IBM Guardium solutions. All of that can come into play to really help with your app integration. Some of the pitfalls to avoid, I would say, don't try to do too much at a time. While you want to be able to continue to grow and take advantage of this, and leveraging public cloud can be appealing and be able to jump to it out the gate, take a tempered approach to be able to understand how this workload is going to be running in a public cloud or in a hybrid cloud or on premises, and how it would be built out. And being able to work through that in that manner allows you to have a much more better understanding of how that cost is going to be, how the workload is going to look, how the security is going to be built out, and don't try to do everything all at once. That can be pretty painful if you miss a step along the way. I'd also say, before you move to a public cloud, have a healthy on-premises practice. Have the right infrastructure in place, have the right processes for documentation, change control, automation, your security, DR testing, all that goes into play to be able to have a healthy on-premises environment before you make that jump to that public cloud. And one of the biggest things I see is, clients think that they can do it on their own. While you may have these skilled resources in-house to do some of it, there's always things that need to be filled from a gap perspective. Leveraging partners like IBM or Logicalis that have done this over and over again allows you to really understand a skilled resource and their experiences to be able to help map your environment and what you need to do and leverage their knowledge for the best success possible.
Oh, wow. So it seems like there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you're dealing with the storage strategy. So I wanted to bring this up because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand some of these stats, right? Hybrid cloud data breaches cost $1.19 million less than security breaches, affecting the public cloud, which you kind of touched on a little bit. Other than what you mentioned previously, what additional steps should companies be doing to enhance security when they're using a hybrid cloud? I know you covered a little bit of it. Is there more?
Yeah, I mean, security is always the main concern for that data, and having these data. There's a lot of different data points with regards to the cost of a data breach, what type of data. It can be very impactful for a business. But no matter how many walls and barbed wire an organization can put around their data, there's always a hole that bad actors could leverage. So minimizing the holes through the IBM security software and implementation help from partners can greatly reduce that risk, but also being able to be prepared for that quick recovery in the event of a data breach is what that next step to really minimize the cost of a data breach. There's many inputs to really get through all of that. And what we see is the biggest cost is that actual cost to recover. And I think IBM has some stats around that I think the average time for a recovery is over a month for an actual cyber attack data lock situation. And within a month, I think something like, if I remember correctly, it was around 30 or 40% of businesses go out of business as a result of that data breach. I have seen clients, call us, after a breach and say, hey, we need to be able to recover it. We need to rebuild. And it's just such a drain on the environment to be able to, or the workload to be able to get that business back up and running. Whereas we have the tools and capabilities, IBM has the flash system and the cyber vault capability to be able to position you to quickly recover, not only from a manual standpoint, but also from an automated standpoint. It can integrate with, your SIM solutions, your SOAR solutions like QRadar, as well as your automation tools, provide things like Red Hat Ansible to be able to quickly automate the identification of a breach, find the right data point to be able to restore to, automatically restore it back to production, and then you can get around this ransomware attack because the immutable backup is protected and be able to restore it and get back up and running. Leveraging this approach will help you really get those key workloads back online. You're going to be able to protect them. You're going to be able to diagnose when there is an attack and be able to recover in hours instead of days, weeks, or months for that environment.
Well, thank you so much. So there are a lot of moving parts as definitely, and I know that there's some key takeaways that we can take away from here. So, you mentioned that for a wrap up here. So, kind of talk, hybrid cloud can be difficult. What's our takeaway with that?
Yeah, so like we touched on early on, looking at data and data management and application integration as a legacy view of just block storage or file storage and taking this new step into securing your environment can be a complex undertaking. We mentioned some of the integration points with your SIEM and your SOAR offerings, being able to automate that recovery, being able to implement immutability. We touched a little bit on key management, being able to protect those encryption keys and be able to send them off to another location. All these come into play when you're looking at trying to protect your environment and to reduce your cyber insurance costs. Being able to do the repeat DR test like we talked about as well. And all of that can be somewhat difficult. And I would urge you to leverage Logicalis, leverage IBM, to be able to help you navigate and build the right processes to help protect your environment and keep your cyber insurance costs at a minimum.
Okay, and I see we have be prepared and take a manageable timetable.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts were right, be prepared. But yeah, the manageable timetable, that goes back to the statement with regards to try not to bite off more than what your organization can chew. Understand your key capabilities, understand your workloads, your data value, build the right processes and that you need to be able to protect your environment and run most efficiently, and build from past successes. So you can get a small win with leveraging flash systems to be able to provide fast performance for your application. You can take that and say, okay, well, now I have a flash system in place. I have the capability to do remote replication. I have the capability to do this Cyber Vault immutable backups. You can bite off a little at a time. And then once you start doing that, then you start looking at how to automate it, how to integrate it with your advanced security solutions. But make sure that that is manageable and you're not trying to do everything all at once. We can help you do that, but it's definitely a lot harder to kind of do that. And when you take that manageable timetable, you're able to allow your team fully understand the architecture instead of just deploying something that you have no idea with really how it's working. It's working out the gate, but then day two operations come into play and your team might be not fully understanding how it's working. So taking those small steps, documenting it, building upon it, and really helps you position you to have a best success with that hybrid cloud.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think 3 and 4 can kind of go together. And this was kind of interesting, security is not just building walls, but also recovering from attacks and not to be scared.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole idea of ransomware, cyber attacks often keeps CIOs, CTOs, even CFOs up late at night thinking about how they're going to be able to protect their environment, keep their business in the event of a cyber attack, because it's likely going to happen in the next 5 years with every organization to one level or another. Some of them might have multiple attacks, but as many walls as you build up, there's always going to be some way to kind of get around that. So being able to have that kind of last ditch or last line of defense to be able to restore your environment in a very quick, timely manner will greatly reduce the impact once that breach happens, because they can go out and lock the data, but in those immutable safeguarded copies we talked about before, they can't touch those. There's going to be versions that are going back, weeks, potentially even longer than that, for you to leverage to be able to quickly get your environment back up and running. And it doesn't require you to pull in from a backup provider to be able to restore that data. And yeah, like I said, don't be scared. Logicalis and IBM are here. They've done this before with many different clients. They can help protect your data, help position you to be the most nimble in the event of an attack, and it keeps the dollars out of those bad actors that trying to hold your data for ransom.
Well, thank you so much for that. I would definitely feel most protected with Logicalis and IBM. So it looks like we do have a couple questions. If you have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. So the first one I want to touch on here is something you mentioned. So you mentioned Cyber Vault. How would that fit into our environment? And is there a way to avoid rip and replace?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cyber Vault's kind of the IBM branded name for this immutable copy data protection that can be leveraged in the event of a cyber attack to be able to recover from it. The flash system storage that it's running on doesn't necessarily have to force you to replace your existing block storage to make that happen. You might have EMC, you might have Pure, you might have NetApp, but you might have a lot of various storage vendors. And the flash system storage has a capability to do this thing called external virtualization, where it can sit as a front end and provide these new capabilities to protect your data in a immutable fashion while still leveraging your current investments. Whether it's with IBM or whether it's with another partner, I think there's something over 300 or 400 different storage vendors that are supported behind the Flash system to be able to do this. And the fact that you can do this immutable backup data protection with these safeguarded copies without having to rip and replace your environment is a key way to save money, but still get the benefit of the solution.
Oh, wow, that is interesting. I didn't realize that it supported all of the different vendors. That is definitely good to know. Okay, we have another question. So Michael, what's the best way to get started implementing a data resilient solution for mission critical applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have another podcast that if you follow up, I can direct you to and talk about it, but it talks through the whole Cyber Vault maturation process. Really how it starts is reaching out to Logicalis. We can walk through evaluating your data. We can do what's called a CRAT, a cyber resilience assessment tool is what it is. But we basically go into your environment and say, okay, if you were to be attacked, what would be that impact to your environment? What data would not be able to be restored? And we can understand what that is. So that's building the understanding of where your risks are. The next level is to continue to engage with Logicalis, and we can help architect and design the solution that will provide that immutable data protection and meet your business needs from a performance, capacity, flexibility. All of that comes into play for your needs and what we're trying to accomplish. And then once you get that deployed, designed, then we can help you deploy that environment to where we're following best practices. We're able to demonstrate the recoverability capability with the solution. And then if you're really wanting to get to that next level where we talked about integrating with things like QRadar or integrating with your automation stack, we can provide solutions around that as well and professional services to help you get to that point to where in the event of an attack, it's almost like an easy button. I'm not saying that because that's kind of copyrighted, but it makes those recovery times much, much shorter and gets your business back up online in the event of that disaster attack that might bring your organization to its knees. The IBM solution will be able to quickly and automate that back up and running to where you do not have that huge cost of a breach.
Well, thank you, so much for kind of walking us through what seems, like quite a journey. As Michael mentioned, if you want to talk to him or a member of the Logicalis team, if you have any more questions, I put up on the screen. There's ways to interact. We have a chat here, which is vtechly.com. More than happy to get you guys connected. You can also call the number on the screen, which is 213-502-0682, or you can also email at connections@vtechly, and we'll be more than happy to get you hooked up with the awesome Logicalis team. And as mentioned, feel free to have a chat and talk about your challenges and priorities, and also have a bite on us. So just want to say thank you so much, Michael. You've given us so much insight and kind of taken us down the path and the journey of and not making it so scary, because there's a lot of components that are in play here. So I just want to thank you for your time. Everyone else, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Your input is, widely appreciated. So a member of our team will reach out to you. We'd like to collect some of your feedback, on today's event and topic. And also we want to confirm your delivery address so that we can get you out your either your Yeti Rambler or your Tile Pro. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the event. Thank everybody again and have a blessed day.